I'm Father Stephen Riley here on this sunny day in the east end of Glasgow in Glasgow Green, and I'm reflecting upon the Theology of the Body, which is the name given to a series of talks given by Pope John Paul II on his Wednesday audiences near the beginning of his pontificate, in which he affirmed the beauty of the human body and all of the implications that has for the ways in which we treat our own bodies and the bodies of others. John Paul reminds us that our bodies speak. Of course, we speak through words, and it is our bodies which are speaking. Our tongues are forming the words, our brains are formulating them. But also, we know that so much of communication is non-verbal, and we're able to carry on almost whole conversations with people that we know well through gestures alone. And John Paul is very keen that the way in which we speak with the help of our bodies, both verbal and non-verbal, should be truthful, but knows that because of our sinfulness that they can tend sometimes to be lies. Ways in which we can do so are multiple. We can shake a person's hand, whereas in fact we don't really like the person. We are able to look upon a person and smile at them, but inside we are bearing some kind of grudge against them. It's important that we're able to align our physical bodies and what they are speaking about and what they're telling us with what we actually mean. The sincerity of the sign of peace at Mass, for example, is so important, and it rests upon that what we are saying with our bodies is actually the truth. We know that our bodies can kind of go out of line with what we are actually saying, and that we can have a tendency through sin to not say what we mean. And we have to be clear about what we mean through the way in which we speak with our bodies. With my own students at university, when I'm talking about this, I talk about, say, walking into a lecture for the first lesson of the year, and I maybe spot someone that I've known from years past, and I go up to that person and give them a hug, and they would hug me back, and that would be a perfectly normal thing to do. It would be something which expresses the affection that I have for the person, and it would be important to express it in that way. It's a truthful sign given by my body. But the example that I give is perhaps maybe at the end of the lecture everyone has left the class and there's one person left behind who is asking questions, and it's a person that I don't really know. Now if I hugged that person or maybe give them a little kiss, speak about that, I can see the horror in the faces of my students, and rightly so, because the person would be saying, what's going on? What's he trying to say? Because our body does speak, and it has to speak the truth, and it has to speak with clarity. And in that instance, at best it's speaking in a muddled way, and at worst it's trying to say something which is not the reality and not the truth. In perhaps more deep and more serious ways, our bodies can go out of kilter with our intention and with the reality. In adultery, for example, where my commitment is given for life to my husband or my wife, but my body is speaking that language to another person. And you may say that, well, you've told the person that you're not going to leave your husband or wife, and they know that. But that's not the reality. You may say that with your lips, but then when in a moment of intimacy, then what you're saying with your whole body is that you belong to me and I belong to you. That's written so deep into our hearts and into our psyches that we can't avoid that conclusion when we're acting with each other in such a deep and such an intimate way. Another example might be pornography, in which what's presented on a screen as being something which is to do with intimacy or to do with commitment, beauty or pleasure, in fact is the opposite of that. It's an exploitation. And so it's gone way out of kilter what my body is saying and what the reality is and what the truth is. And perhaps for modern society then, something which is perhaps more difficult to understand, but we can continue the logic of this, is sex before marriage. We may seem to be committed to a person, but the Church would always teach that the correct and proper place for the expression of genital intimacy is marriage. Because of that with my body I'm saying to a person, I'm yours, you belong to me, I belong to you, I'm committed to you. Together we're going to make a family, we're going to create a life together. And yet, if we haven't already given that commitment through marriage, then is our body telling the truth about the situation in which we find ourselves? These, of course, are challenging issues and things to make us really think. And the last word always goes to forgiveness. We are frail beings. We are all sinners. We recognise that. We're all called to strive for the best. We're called to be entirely committed to the vocation which is given to us, but when we fail, as inevitably we will, then the Lord is there to offer us forgiveness, peace and mercy.